Welcome back everybody, my name's Nick930 and this is my review for id Software and Avalanche Studios' collaborative project, Rage 2. Rage 2 is an open-world first-person shooter game that puts a heavy emphasis on collecting weapons and completing open-world activities. Players will need to work with a few friendly NPCs to complete tasks around a desolate wasteland, all while simultaneously dismembering mutant soldiers and crazy bandits across jungles, deserts, and swamplands. Rage 2 brings the solid shooting mechanics of Doom and Wolfenstein to the explosive open-world environments of Just Cause and Mad Max, a recipe that should surely provide the ultimate in open-world first-person shooter action. But, unfortunately, several poor design choices and sloppy mission integration significantly dampers the appeal, and the entire experience feels devoid of any distinct identity as a result. Rage 2 takes place 30 years after the original game, with the once desolate wasteland now teeming with lush plant life. You assume the role of either a male or female protagonist named Walker, who, after an attack on their home base at the start of the game, is forced to venture out into the wasteland in order to fight back against an evil mutant faction called the Authority. Along the way, you'll meet friendly characters, some of which will appear somewhat familiar to fans of the original game, and will need to complete a series of quests for each of them in order to prepare for a final battle against the leader of the Authority, Martin Cross. Rage 2's plot, like most id Software titles, really doesn't provide much depth. It simply establishes an antagonist, gives you some mission objectives, and you're set off the leash to kill whatever, wherever you want for the next 20 or so hours. It's a pretty lackluster experience in terms of its narrative, which is surprising considering how much the original game was criticized for the same reason. The gameplay, on the other hand, has been improved substantially, with better combat capabilities, more interesting vehicles, and a larger open world to explore. So first, let's talk about the game's general mission structure. The primary goal of Rage 2 is to prepare Project Dagger, a collaborative effort between 3 ally NPCs to take down the Authority once and for all. Typically, this involves meeting up with a character at a safe zone, driving to an indicated location on the map, and killing a large amount of bandits and mutants to reach a key item. These missions are easily the most fun in the game, as they provide a lot of interesting interior locations to fight in, while also throwing in the occasional boss encounter or epic moment. But unfortunately, these missions are also incredibly rare. Each character has maybe 2 of these missions to complete, on top of the intro mission and the finale. To account for this, Rage 2 puts extra emphasis on its open world activities, with each of the 3 characters requiring that you complete different types of activities in order to progress the story. Marshall requires that you complete kill and destroy activities. These typically involve venturing into an enemy outpost and killing many bandits and mutants with any acquired weapons or abilities. Lusum Hagar will task you with capture and control activities. These activities seem to focus more on making the roads safer to travel on, like clearing out roadblocks, disabling Authority sentry turrets, or engaging large convoys Mad Max style. And Dr. Fasir's activities are called Search and Recover. These activities are all about finding weapons, resources, and collectibles, and are probably one of the more important objectives to complete. All the game's weapons and superpowers will need to be recovered from large vaults called arcs, which are hidden all throughout the game world. And because these arcs are mostly optional, there's a possibility that you could reach the end of the game without a full arsenal if you're not careful. Completing any of these activities will earn points towards that associated character's project level, with a minimum level of 5 required for each character in order to progress the story into the final phases. This feels like a very lazy way to extend the length of the game's campaign, and I feel like it would have been far more interesting had they provided a large number of fleshed out story missions and kept the open world activities as optional side activities. It's not like reaching level 5 for any one character takes a long time, but it feels more tedious than it should. In addition to progressing the story, increasing the project level also provides you with upgrades to your abilities through a project skill tree. Using earned project points, you can unlock persistent perks, like the ability to reload your weapon while sprinting, or increased ammo capacity. On top of the open world activities related to Project Dagger, there's also a few optional activities to participate in, including wave-based combat arenas, race events, bounties to track down, and plenty of locations to explore for extra loot. But even with these extra activities, the open world just isn't all that interesting to explore. It certainly appears to have more variety than the original Rage, with lush jungles, vast canyons, and large swamps, but the world just feels empty. And it seems like the developers recognized this too, and threw in a bunch of strange pockets of enemies off to the side of the road every 100 feet, that just feel out of place and never offer any sort of challenge or obstacle. Thanks to the efforts of Avalanche Studio, Rage 2's vehicular combat is significantly improved over the driving from the original game, with smoother controls, more variety in weapons, and more interesting encounters with other vehicles. The most exciting part of driving around the world of Rage 2 is dealing with the many large convoys around the map. These convoys typically consist of several weaker trucks and motorcycles and are led by a massive boss vehicle capable of firing a barrage of mortars, electric traps, and side-mounted machine guns. If your vehicle's up to the task, these can be some of the most exciting moments in the game, though you're going to want to make sure that you've properly upgraded your vehicle's armor, weapons, and have properly resupplied before engaging them. What's odd about Rage 2's vehicles though is that there's very little variety in actual practical vehicles. The only customizable vehicle seems to be the Phoenix, which has a talking AI, can be repaired on the field, and will automatically spawn at any nearby town. You can always store random vehicles you find in the wasteland, but there doesn't really seem to be a purpose to doing that other than adding them to your collection. These vehicles are never as strong or as fast as the Phoenix, and come off as completely useless, with the one exception being the Icarus, which I found myself using constantly to move from objective to objective in the later half of the game. It's a little disappointing how overpowered this vehicle is though, as there's absolutely no anti-air weapons or other air-based enemy vehicles to contend with. You can literally just fly across all of the enemy roadblocks and checkpoints, and drop down right at the end of large areas, which completely defeats the purpose of upgrading your Phoenix. But vehicles are only half of the gameplay experience. The other half is spent blasting enemies away in classic id Software fashion, with plenty of unique weapons and gory dismemberment. This is one of the few things that Rage 2 does perfectly. Everything about the combat feels fluid and satisfying, with powerful weapons and fun abilities to take advantage of. There's the Burst Fire Sidewinder pistol, which I never really found much use for after the intro, the Ranger Assault Rifle, which will generally be your go-to weapon throughout the entire game, the Combat Shotgun, which not only deals a ton of damage in close range, but can fire a charged up slug round that sends enemies flying backwards. The Smart Rocket Launcher, which can lock on to multiple targets, the Grav Dart Launcher, which feels like a nod to the grapple tether from Just Cause, with players capable of linking objects and enemies together and triggering them to smash into each other. The Charged Pulse Cannon, a fully automatic machine gun that becomes more powerful with sustained fire. The Hyper Cannon, a semi-automatic rifle that can down enemies with charged up collateral shots. And the Firestorm Revolver, which fires incendiary sticky charges and can be detonated with a snap of the fingers. This is a pretty decent arsenal of weapons, though I regularly found that the shotgun and assault rifle were the best all-around weapons for most situations, and rarely found much practical use for the more unique guns. But in order to get the most out of any of these weapons, you'll need to spend any collected weapon core mod points on weapon upgrades, many of which can greatly improve the weapon's power, handling, and overall efficiency, with even more powerful upgrades being made available after unlocking additional upgrade tiers with collected Feltrite. On top of this already powerful weapon arsenal, you can also make use of special superpowers, which greatly improve the flow of combat and add an interesting new twist to the experience. Powers include Shatter, which is a sort of force push, Slam, which allows you to superhero drop to the ground and knock enemies into the air, Dash, which can be used to quickly dodge past enemy fire, and Vortex, which can not only be used to kill enemies, but can also be used as a sort of jump pad. But the real fun comes from combining all the weapons and powers together, which really helps make you feel like an unstoppable superhuman. When in a tight spot, you can activate the Overdrive ability, which greatly increases weapon damage, firing rate, and also increases player damage resistance and speed. Just like the weapons and vehicles, Rage 2's powers can be upgraded by means of nanotrite boosters, decreasing their cooldown time and increasing their effectiveness in combat. Other offensive capabilities include standard frag grenades, infusion injectors which can provide a boost to health and reduce overdrive and ability cooldowns, small turrets that will fly around and shoot at enemies, and the return of Rage's iconic wing sticks, which function like deadly boomerangs and can be upgraded to track targets and even hit multiple targets in a single throw. All of these powers and weapons combine to make Rage 2's combat fun and addicting, and because of the game's heavy emphasis on clearing out bandit checkpoints and camps, there's more than enough opportunities to practice. Which is why it's odd that Rage 2 seems to hold your hand throughout the entire experience. Right from the get-go, Rage 2 interrupts the flow of the smooth combat with completely needless freeze-frame notifications. These notifications appear every single time an objective is completed, and are then followed up with a level up page to show how much XP you've earned. I see no reason why this couldn't have been incorporated into the game without interrupting the flow of the gameplay. I also don't see why tutorials for new weapons and abilities are made to be mandatory instead of just being available as an optional feature in the menus. In addition to this, Rage 2 also suffers from a series of annoying bugs and overall bad pacing. I've had AI get stuck running against walls, the game's sprint function being permanently activated for some reason, the weapon select screen getting stuck on the screen, and even had the game autosave as I was falling, creating an endless loop of unavoidable death. Because of Rage 2's over-reliance on open-world activities, the game's pacing is all over the place. with difficult enemy fortifications scattered throughout the map with no discernible pattern. Overall, Rage 2's gameplay can be fun, assuming you spend the time to search for all the weapons and powers first. But otherwise, the experience can feel very repetitive and uninteresting. Finally, let's talk about the presentation. The vast open world of Rage 2 is brought to life with beautiful volumetric lighting, an impressive level of detail, and some awesome explosive effects, all without any loading screens. I never in the 20 hours I spent playing ran into any instance where my framerate dropped below 100 FPS, and I also never witnessed any serious problems like crashing. The game's character models aren't the most impressive looking models I've seen in recent memory, but since most of the game is spent blasting enemies into a million pieces, this is hardly an issue. Overall, Rage 2 is a decent experience, but probably one you're safer waiting on a sale for. The excellent combat and engaging vehicular encounters can only carry the experience so far, especially when taking into consideration the lackluster story, repetitive mission design, and empty open-world environment. I think the best way to describe Rage 2 is a first-person version of Crackdown 3, which also features some great combat mechanics but had no real substance to keep it entertaining. But what do you guys think? Have you been enjoying Rage 2? Let me know in the comments section, and be sure to check out my most recent History of Splinter Cell project linked at the end. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos posted every week.